I would actually go as far as saying that these, in my view, are even superior to the first class coaches that we saw at the beginning of the year. Hi there everyone, I hope I find you well. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jennifer Kirk and we're up here in the loft on Weir Yard. And today a big thank you goes out to Brian at 247 Developments, who very kindly has sent over one of the new Hornby, Liverpool and Manchester Railway third class open coaches, and these are part of the range that accompanies the Rocket that was released right back at the beginning of the year as part of the centenary range. But these third class coaches have finally made it through, and I'm really grateful to Brian from 247 Development who sent me this coach for review to be able to take a closer look and show you what I think of this model. So in association with the channel sponsor Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, let's take a closer look. This is the model that was very kindly sent over by Brian from 247 Developments, and here are the details of the company if you want to go and check them out. You may remember that we did a review on some of their nameplates that they sent over that allowed us to actually name a locomotive Jenny and another one Zoe, so really grateful for those, and certainly really grateful for being given the opportunity to review this item, which actually pretty much sold out within minutes of it getting announced. It was one of the surprise announcements of the Hornby centenary year range, and it followed on from, if you remember, the Rocket sets that really did sell like a rocket back at the beginning of the year. Now they made two. They did the one that came in the Triang packaging, and then this, which everybody refers to as the main range version, although I believe that they're both as limited as each other, but I could be wrong on that. Of course, the difference between both of these, if you remember from the review that we did, is it's the same locomotive, packaging is different, but actually the three coaches have different names. So there's one locomotive available, but 6 different coaches. Now, adding to that, if you remember from going to visit the National Railway Museum at York, and actually latterly at Shildon at the outpost that they've got there, the reproductions that were made for, I think they were the Stockton and Darlington Railway 100th anniversary back in the 1920s, by the L&MR Railway. They were built on, I think they were built on wagon underframes. The originals from the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, as far as I understand it, don't survive. And actually, whilst the original Rocket does survive, it's in as modified condition because they did get modified a lot through their lifetime. This particular coach, though, was highly requested to kind of complete that lineup for the cavalcade at the Stockton and Darlington celebrations through the ages. And it's certainly an eye-catching coach, very different from those first-class coaches, which owe more to their design to stage coaches of the era. This one is just a very plain, open wagon. I believe that later on in their life there are some pictures which show them with a kind of an open plan roof, so almost like 4 poles and then a roof suspended over the top. And the reason for that was because some of the smuts and soot that came from the locomotive otherwise was sort of descending and coating the passengers with a layer of filth and grime, which probably didn't prove very popular whatsoever. If we look here at the end, we've got a catalogue number of R40141 L&MR, that's Liverpool and Manchester Railway, open third class coach, and this has been done in conjunction, it seems, with the Railway Museum. Certainly it is a model of a preserved artefact in the National Collection. It's a pretty standard size wagon type box, so we're just going to slide this out from the packaging. And what is immediately apparent is it doesn't have conventional couplings. Of course, it is designed to match up with that Rocket set, so it comes with exactly the same method with these plastic representation of the chain couplings that coupled the prototypes, or at least the reproductions that we know as the prototypes. It comes with 2 of these, 1 for each side. You do get some spares in the set that comes with the rocket, and likewise you probably only need 1 of these to couple this on the end of the train. One of the things that I did find during the actual review of the rocket was it's not very powerful. So if you have any kind of a gradient, it struggles enormously. So rather than just adding this to the train, I think this is an either or with one of those first class coaches. That said, the wheels on this, I think Hornby have taken on board the limited pulling power of the rocket, and these are very, very free running. And there's a little bit of a scrape there when it's upside down, but what I found is when it's on the layout, this actually will just roll away on even the tiniest of gradients, so it's not going to tax that little 022 locomotive a great deal. Now, first impressions are incredibly good. When you look at this, the finish on that, there's some very, very tight and clear lining out. Did have some very simplistic lining, but this really light blue, almost, I think this is pretty much the same blue that I use on some of my industrial stuff. It's a really pleasing colour, actually, I have to say, very easy on the eye. And that very simple lining with the kind of curves in the corners rather than straight edges really does work ever so nice. But what I think is really a tremendous feature of these, a bit difficult to show up on camera, but the recess where these big long bars for the buffers is actually, you can see all the way through. I'm just trying to see, you could just about make out there as I wave my hand behind. These cutouts are exactly as per the prototype. And really, I would actually go as far as saying that these, in my view, are even superior to the first class coaches that we saw at the beginning of the year. Certainly the level of detail here really is brought to the fore by that very light blue. And it's a kind of, it's not matte, it's not gloss, it's a satin finish, which does work really, really well. We've also got what look to be separately applied detail with these handles painted in the brass metal colour, and they work really, really well, actually, really well indeed. That there, if you're wondering, it's just a bit of dirt, so nothing to worry about. The little step boards as well that we get on these are very finely done, pretty much the same as what we got on the first class carriage, but they are surprisingly robust given how fine they are. There's a bit of spring to them, so they will survive a few knocks. We've got separate steps as well. They look to be metal. They are very, very fine. And the W-irons and the spring detail, it's not working springs, but these are really nicely done with plenty of air gaps through where they should be. If we look to the underside, what's actually really quite interesting is that we get a fully detailed chassis. And as far as I can tell, yes, certainly, I think if we, I am actually inclined, I don't normally do this, but I am tempted to dismantle this just because I've spotted something in this chassis which has actually really impressed me. So I'm going to take a punt on undoing these 2 screws and just very carefully put them to one side. Let's see, does this chassis pull apart? I think it is glued, or at least it may be that the paint, just checking there, the paint appears to have kind of stuck them together, but the full chassis is a separate piece. And what I can actually see, it may be quite difficult to show up on camera, is that the chassis is proud of the floor, so that it, to all intents and purposes, is just like the real thing. Now, these are details that unless you crawl underneath the real thing, you're never really going to see, but we've also got those springs for the drawbar assemblies as well. Really nicely done in there. I'm going to put those screws back in. I don't want to force it, to be honest with you. I can see the chassis lifting slightly, but it feels like there's probably a dab of glue in there as well, so I'm not going to risk it. I had thought that possibly the chassis would come apart, but it doesn't. I'm really liking this chassis. It's so nicely done. The wheels are metal single spoke wheels. They can just be taken out like that on pinpoint ends, and really there's not much else to say. One thing I would say is that they're straight into the plastic, so it may be the case that you find with a lot of running, which I suspect these aren't really something that you would run and run and run, you may find that you get a little bit of wear in there, but certainly a little bit of oil. And they are very, very free running, it has to be said. It's got the correct profile buffers too. They're not sprung loaded, but what I would say is that they do look as per the prototypes at the National Railway Museum. When we look to the inside, I'll start with the good points here. This is where there's a few little detractions for me. I understand why Hornby have done them, but nonetheless, they're there. What I will say is if you look down the side there, you can see the representation of the inside of the doors and even down to the indentation where the lock would be. That is a really nice touch, and that is the same on both sides. We have the representation of the insides of the door, something you don't often see because of the limitations of the injection moulding. We have the partitions between these three areas. We've got the planked floor as per the prototype. But there's no bench seats whatsoever in here, and it's my understanding, although I haven't actually seen inside the real ones as they're presented at the National Railway Museum. You kind of walk up to them at ground level, but I believe that they should have just sort of like a very simplistic wooden bench seat of some description, probably even just slats from one side of the wagon to the other. And there is no attempt to model that at all, not even as an additional user place in part. And of course, you're going to be looking down on these an awful lot, and it's just something which I understand why they haven't put them in. But because of the open nature of these coaches, it does become a little bit obvious. Of course, it's something that you can obviously adapt and make your own. I think these would look great with a complement of sitting passengers. I think somewhere like Hardy's Hobbies do Victorian style seated passengers, which would be perfect for a project such as this, either as an authentic Liverpool and Manchester railway layout. I've not yet seen anybody actually try and model the period, but also certainly I think the 100th anniversary in the 1920s, there was a lot of people who got dressed up for the occasion in period costumes, so you could model the reenactment in this sort of LMS period, and I suspect that by the time we got round to the 150th as well, when these came out to play, people did get dressed up for the occasion as well. So I think there's perfect excuse to have some Victorian looking passengers placed in here. I think they just would look amazing as part of a scene or a diorama. The ends of the wagon, again, we've got that really nice, I love this blue, it just works so well. And that lining is really, really nicely done. The drawbar hooks, they very much are a little hook. They remind me of the hooks between the Pico slate wagons. If you ever buy a set of those in 009, the couplings between the wagons of the set are like this, with the 009 couplings on the end, and that's what it reminds me of. And with these, what we actually have are these representations of the chain links, exactly the same as we had for the rocket set, and these just hook over the top and hook it to the next wagon. What I have found is it's possible to hook these to standard tension lock couplings, so you can actually haul these around behind standard rolling stock if you so choose, but primarily they're intended to go with the rocket. And I would love to see Hornby bring out an actual full range. I think there is so much potential. Maybe we'll find out in January when they announce the new range. Sans Spiral, Novelty. I think the one with the horses on the treadmill, I think that would be more of a static type thing, but certainly I think that would be an amazing way to grow this range, and certainly these have sold so well it would be interesting to see these come out again and maybe mop up some of that pent-up demand, because they went down ever so well this year. When it comes to running, as I said to you, very, very free running, and I think it has to be because the rocket locomotive does not have a huge amount of grip. But as a display item, as something that's just a bit of a novelty, if you pardon the pun, I think that these are amazing coaches, and in my opinion, I would rate them slightly higher than the first class ones in the original set. Well worth it if you were lucky enough to get an order in for these. I know that there were a lot of people who were disappointed because they just couldn't get an order in because they sold so well. And that really does say to me that there is demand that would justify a second run of these from Hornby. So really looking forward to that. In terms of scores, well, for finish, there is nothing really that I can fault on these. I'm going to give them a 10 out of 10 for finish. Functionality, they run really, really well. There is a minor concern with the bearings on these, and I'm not entirely sure that they're going to run excessively. There may be some wear on that. Yet to be seen, they may not do, but I would give these a 9 out of 10. Ease of use doesn't apply for wagons. Aesthetics, again, absolutely perfect, although lack of bench seats is a little bit of a concern. It's not going to fox the Sirius modeler, but certainly it would have been nice to have a representation even as a slot-in solid piece. So I'm going to give this an 8 for aesthetics. And value for money, they are an incredibly good price. If you were able to get these, certainly if Hornby had charged even £10 a wagon more, I think they would have still sold them all out very, very quickly. So again, a 10 out of 10. So that gives us a 37 out of 40 for this wagon, which is a really, really respectable score. Well, I hope you found that informative. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And unfortunately, there's no links down below to get your own ones of these because as far as I can tell, they are pretty much sold out everywhere. And it's a real shame that I think Hornby have underestimated the demand because they really have sold incredibly well. So really, this is one to watch, and don't forget to check out some of the lower volume retailers, such as Bolton Model Mart down in Bolton, who don't necessarily have an internet presence, and you may get lucky and find at one of these smaller retailers one of these coaches still in stock. You can also check us out over on Patreon and help to support the channel if you so wish, and help us to keep making videos that you want to see. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky 107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, Chris Moss, Robert Sears, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, and Mo Henry. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.